Hi everyone, it's Jill Foster here with a new PB&J card class. And this card class we will be creating a holiday themed card. And here is a look at the card that we will be making. I just love this cozy scene. This could also be used for any type of winter greeting. You could send it for New Year's, even a masculine thinking of you birthday card. You could also use it for that. And this is featuring our new cling stamp 40-460 Cozy Cabin. And I just wanted to mention before we begin, I will have a full supply list up at the very end of the video up on screen. So if you'd like to look at any of the supplies that I'm using, including the stamp number and name, markers, inks, colors, that will all be up on screen, so you can just hit pause and check it out in more detail at that time. So here I am using the 12 half pen watercolor box set from ARTEZA, and I just wanted to work on my sky a little bit before I began my stamping. So I'm mixing in some different greens and blues, and I will even pull in some grays. I'm working on Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. This is a cold press paper, so it does have some texture to it, which is nice. I like the texture that it provides, sort of that thickness and substantial quality, and it is really great. You can add lots of layers of water on it, as you will see that I am doing here as I play around with this background. Now I am just focusing up on the sky area. I want to keep down there at the bottom more white, because that's where the snowbanks will be after we stamp our cabin. And I just keep going back, adding more layers. I started light, and then I like to get darker as I go and as I get braver. So once that is dry, I'm ready to do my stamping. I'm first inking the trees using an archival ink pad. This is the prickly pear color, and this just gets me a nice sort of base coat of ink down on those trees. They stamp very nicely using the ink pad. And now I'm going to go in with some water-soluble markers, the ARTEZA Real Brush markers, and just color and add some additional shading onto these trees. But because that base layer of stamping is there, I think it's just more forgiving. Now this, like I said, this is textured watercolor paper, so I do like to be able to get some multiple impressions. That's why having a stamp positioning tool makes this very easy. I am going ahead in here just darkening up my color. I found that first color that I used was just a little bit too light. I'm coloring the entire trees here. I'm going to mist with water and then stamp those down. And I like how this just starts building up that color, picking up different layers with those brush strokes. It's definitely a layering process, but if you want something more simple, you could just do the inks. If you want to be able to capture more detail or do more blending on your paper, you may want to try stamping onto Bristol cardstock. That will definitely capture more details because there will be less texture there. If you aren't planning to add any water, you can also just do this onto a regular smooth cardstock. You can see here I'm just adding more color, misting with water, and stamping that down. And like I said, I will have all of the exact colors listed up on screen at the very end of the video. Now here I've grabbed just a very light blue, and I just wanted to sort of just color this on towards the center of the trees, just to make them look a little bit more substantial against that background that I had pre-painted. So I just colored that. Here I'm going right directly over some of the stamping with one of those real brush markers. These have definitely like a real paintbrush look, so they work well for painting just right directly onto the stamped areas, and they are water soluble, so I can go in and just blend the edges of some of that too. And I already like how much more depth that is giving the trees by coloring directly onto that stamping in some areas. So I want to just go ahead and dry that off because I had misted it before. And here I'm just going to get that little bit of the outline of the cabin and the chimney and stamp that down. And then a little bit of shadow area here on the cabin. Now I definitely am going for a very loose watercolor look with the cabin, and you'll see that when I go in and I add some more reds to this, that I'm going to blend this out. Actually, you won't see a lot of the details of the cabin just because I wanted it to have a very watercolor look to it. Now I'm using a Twi marker. This is another water-soluble marker from ARTEZA, and I've grabbed this because I love this particular color of red. It doesn't go too pink when I add water to it, and it has a really firm tip, so it's easy to apply to all of these detailed areas onto the house. Now I'm avoiding the windows and the door. And I'm going to lightly mist that and stamp it down. And while it's still wet, I'm just going to pick up my brush and just add and blend it out. So sorry for my head there. I needed to see what I was doing, but I apologize. That makes it so you can't see what I'm doing, but it won't be there for long. What I'm doing is I'm just blending out that using the water on my paintbrush. And you can see it just gave it that really nice watercolor look. And you can just really choose how many details you want to keep there and how much you want to sort of fade out and blend with the water. And that particular red, like I said, is nice because it does not go too pink when I add water to it. Here I'm just pulling in some of that brown on the door and the windows. And again, while it's still wet, I'm just going to blend those out. If a little bit of the red mixes in there, that is fine with me. And I just want this to have a very loose watercolor look. I forgot to put a little red there on the chimney, so I just added it right with the marker directly to the paper. Here I'm going to add a touch of blue just for the shadows on the snow here at the base of the cabin. And I'm just going to draw a couple lines in there and then blend that out with my water. Trying to be careful not to touch that red cabin, that red ink too much so that it doesn't blend down into the snow. Now I will add a few shadows here onto the cabin, but because I had painted that sky already, in the end I was not happy with how this looked because I felt like it was the same color as the sky. So I will show you at near the end of this video a very quick fix for that, and it is very handy to have. I will be using some gouache paint to paint the snow on top of the cabin. And then to finish off the scene here, I wanted it to move all the way across my card. So I'm just drawing and extending those lines for the snow with the same marker I used to stamp it. Now here I'm going to color with the blue marker onto an old acrylic block. Just pick that up and paint some of that up into the sky so that sky blue color is tying into some of that snowbank color down below. As I worked more on this, I wanted it to have sort of a colder, moodier look than that turquoise green sky that I originally had. So things are just changing as I go. I'll just blend that out. I also did off camera there, I'm so sorry, I thought I was recording but I wasn't. I added just a little bit of sponging up into the top corners of that sky. Now here I've put some fresh, not fresh, but right out of the tube gouache paint onto my palette, and I'm just picking that up and I'm painting it on almost just like you would with an acrylic paint. You could use a white acrylic paint to do this. And here is where I started to really love this card because I felt like, oh, it's a snow-covered roof. And so that was popping and it wasn't just blending into that sky. And so I am just painting that on. Such an easy and just sort of quick fix, handy. You don't have to worry if you get something onto the roof or a place you want to have snow. You can just paint this right on top. It is opaque. It's especially opaque because I did not add any water. It is just right out of the tube. I'm also adding a little bit of detail back into those windows and a little bit of snow here and there on the cabin. Now I'm also going to just wet this down a little bit and add in the smoke from the chimney. And I just keep playing around here with some layers on the roof. Here I'm mixing in a little bit more water, and I'm going to splatter the sky with the snow. And add a few more splatters here and there. And here is a look at the finished card. I decided on this one to just keep it as is without a sentiment, but there's certainly room down there at the bottom if you were looking to add one. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, as well as Twitter and our website and blog. And I will link all of those for you down in the YouTube description box below. And here is the supply list as promised.